Barstool have a shirt that says that?
Yeah, they do. That's great.
All right, we're on that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're at episode number 37 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, they do. That's
All
great.
right, we're on that. Oh God, I have YouTube open on another. Back. We're at episode number 37 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're going to be talking about. Give me 2 seconds, guys. Oh God, I have YouTube open on another. We're going to get episode number 37 of the Club and Sub podcast. Are we good? Okay.
Yep.
That's all right. We had a week off, guys. Give us a break. It's these freaking breaks, man.
We did this. Okay. So anyway, episode number 37 of the Club and Sub podcast. We are back. We got Volkov, Overeem tonight or this week. Going to be a fun card. I don't know that it's very good from a betting perspective. I don't particularly love it, but the fights themselves should be pretty exciting. As usual, guys, if you enjoy the show, please drop a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. It would help us a lot. And again, as usual, we are brought to you by Bet Online. Best book by far for MMA. Most props to come out there. Release everything earliest. They have decent limits on early openers. You can get yourself a nice 50% bonus on a first deposit up to $1,000 with the promo code Club Sub. So yeah, Bet Online, they're awesome. They've done us a huge favor here. And again, guys, please, if you enjoy the show, like and subscribe. And yeah, sorry for the technical difficulties, as it has been a couple weeks since we've done this. It's up and down. I'm glad that we're back on a consistent schedule here. But yeah, real quick, we're just waiting for C to get here. We're going to do a little recap of the funeral that was 2 Saturdays ago with UFC 257. I lost 1.88 units on the night. Actually, it was going pretty well before the Conor fight. I said on this show that, I didn't really want to track Conor. Did it anyway. I kind of got what I deserved. So lost the Conor bet, had 2.89 units there. Had a Chandler for a unit plus 150. That was nice to hit. Didn't exactly go the way I hoped it would with him wrestling. But, you'll take the knockout. Obviously, that was always path to victory as well. Had Andrew Sanchez for a unit and a half. That was bad. Murdoch was the clear side there. I also had 2 units on that fight goes to decision, and that was gut-wrenching, to be honest with you. That really, really hurt. The worst part is seeing Sanchez's corner yelling, watch the right hand, and then literally 3 seconds later, him just get crushed with the right hand. Other than that, I had a half unit on Marina Rodriguez plus 270. That was a nice hit. It's hard to, Lags and I have actually talked about this a fair bit. Hard to really assess, what the side is there. Obviously, she won, but, you saw in the first round, again, she got controlled fairly easily. So, again, I think if Ribas maybe is a little bit more aggro in the grappling, she probably covers that line. Hard to say, but that's my gut. I also had a half unit on Ribas submission that didn't hit. And then I had Evloev to close out a parlay with Sumaderji. He made it as sweaty as possible because I actually hedged that with Bud's decision for 0.7 units plus 900. And I almost had a heart attack in rounds 1 and 2 when he kept putting his head in those guillotines. So, yeah, anyway, it was a good event. It was I felt pretty good about my reads, but, yeah, I let my fan card cost me some money. Is what it is. As Andrew's saying, we don't need to ever talk about it again. We're going to get revenge in May. Connor's coming back. You guys have my word. Luke, how was your card?
Yeah, so kind of similar to you. I had some pretty solid reads. I thought the night was going well. And fucking Khalil Roundtree, Marcin Prachniow, I went way too heavy on the under 1.5. I had 3 units on it. It was one of those spots where it's like, oh, it's just too good to be true. But what I will say is I thought that Prachniow showed more of a chin than I think he ever has. I think a lot of those shots would have put him out historically. So just kind of one of those potential variance spots, but also Khalil just not overtly high output either. So I don't really regret the bet. I more so regret the unit sizing and going as heavy on it as it did because I still think that was a tad bit of a variance spot. So that's kind of what killed my night. But I had Muradov straight for a unit and a half at minus 125. Like that one. Thought he was the better fighter. I know me and John disagreed on that, but I thought it was a good style fight for him. I was also on Evloev by decision for a unit and a half at minus 130. Once again, you touched on it. That was a little bit sweaty, but what I will say is whoever gave that fight to Lenz, that judge needs to be shot because I think Evloev pretty clearly won that 29-28. So took that one down. I played Sarukian by decision, unit and a half at -125. That one hit. Probably my best read of the card. The guy was like -700, able to grab him by his most likely win condition at near even. So I thought that was a solid play. And then kind of my little punt of the card crashed and burned on Jessica I by decision at +170. My analysis was slightly off on that. I thought, the metrics might not influence as much with Calderwood clearly being, the higher metric girl. But, she clearly outlanded her. The clinch game was a big thing. But I did say that I thought Jessica I might be able to land takedowns and get control time in that fight, which she did. But unfortunately, she only did it once. So that just didn't come, unfortunately, as much as I liked it to. So yeah, dropped a unit there. But in general, only went down on the night 0.45 units. But still tough, because if that round tree one hit, I probably would have been sitting around, 4 or 5 units on the night. So that sucks.
Lex, how about you?
So I round out all of us, and I actually had the worst night of the three of us, actually. So I lost 2.2 units, but I thought my reads again were okay outside of Reboss. We talked about it, John. I thought, if she would have went more aggro in the first round, she probably gets a submission, but it's tough to really say who the value side was. I would probably still side with Marina, given the huge, gap on the feet. Then we get to Sarah McMahon. Well, kind of similar situation with that. I thought she looked, like a huge favorite until she suddenly didn't. So I played that fight actually kind of smart. I had a unit on her, and then I also had a half unit on the fight ends by sub at +260. Kind of covering myself there, which kind of ended up happening. I thought Sarah could have submitted her herself, but it is what it is. I had a unit and a half as well on Evloev decision. Yep, you got pretty much touched that. I had a unit on Hooker Chandler under 2.5 at +100. This was actually probably, I think, one of my better reads. I thought there was going to be a lot of action, high intensity fight. So like that, and then my night pretty much rode on Connor by knockout, and then I had a small little sprinkle on round 1. So that's where I ate my losses. But overall, the only really regret I would say is going as I probably went too heavy on the Connor knockout, and then same with Rebus as well. But I don't really regret the McMahon bet at -125. I thought she was clearly the better fighter until the collapse kind of happened.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems like the collapse thing is real at this point.
Yeah, so
it's hard to she showed she had every tool to dominate that fight. But yeah, so we'll jump into it. We're gonna skip over. You guys want to come? Should I skip Choi Zalal and we'll just wait for C to get on to hit that?
Yeah, that's fine because that's one of his more vocal talking points, I think.
Yeah. All right, so we'll jump into this card. We got first fight of the night. We got Ode Osborne taking on Jerome Rivera. Luke, I'll start with you. What do you got?
Yeah, so I originally had a play on Bondar over Osborne. I thought it was a pretty bad matchup for Osborne. I know me and John will slightly disagree on that, but I had 2.5 units on Bondar. And of course that fell out, as pretty much every bet I ever make does. So now we get Jerome Rivera. I'm not particularly high on Osborne, but I'm also really not high on Rivera either. So it's kind of one of those interesting spots where, I thought it was a great fight for one guy, but that falls out. But now with the new opponent, I actually think it's a pretty decent spot for Osborne personally. I'm not really willing to lay -200 on it, but I think he has a pretty solid path at knockout here on the feet. I just don't like some of Jerome's defensive tendencies on the ground. Osborne has shown the ability to get taken down with pretty much consistency. Rivera has somewhat amount of a sub game, so I wouldn't be shocked, if Rivera gets a sub too, but Osborne's going to be aggressive off of his back too. So honestly, they kind of dropped this line relatively recently, but the under 2.5, they opened that at +120, which I thought was just stupid. I personally think this under 2.5 should be -175. So for me, I made a personal play on it at the open, but I still think even around evens, even probably all the way up to -122, I think that's a solid value play for this fight.
Legs, how about you?
Yeah, kind of similar thoughts to Luke. I actually had the under 2.5 rounds in that first fight with Bondar and Osborne, as I thought that Bondar was probably going to be able to have a submission win. But in this new matchup, I kind of echo the same sentiments. I like the under 2.5. I think that if Jerome's having success, it's in the grappling, like we touched on, and then Ode has a clear path to knock him out on the feet. So I like the under 2.5. I'd probably play it myself up to like minus 130. But yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't have a play on the original booking here. My feeling was just more I wasn't totally sure what Bondar was, since it seems he has a bit of the Ode syndrome, and that most of his opposition has been really, really poor. And Rivera actually kind of the same way. I have no bet on the fight. I think if any side's got value, it might be Osborne, but again, like I don't really trust him. The guy basically has fought nothing but cans and then got dominated by Kelleher. But like if you actually look at Rivera, it's kind of weird. He basically beat nothing but cans, lost to a couple guys regionally, got dominated, well, didn't get dominated. He got hurt against Brandon Royval. And then, he gets back on the horse against the 7-10 guy in Gangine Perez and fights Kendrick Lockman, who's 8-5, and finishes him. But then in Contender Series, he fought Luis Rodriguez, who's not remotely the UFC level, in my opinion. And I thought he lost that fight clearly. But he got the nod, and obviously it's COVID time, so the UFC is just desperate for people to go in there and fight. So they give him the contract. He gets knocked out by Nam. He fought Francisco Figueiredo, who I think we'd all agree is absolute ass, to be honest. He is not his brother at all, and yet he just basically got grappled to death there. And so, like, I'm thinking about the minus 120 on dimes for fight ends inside the distance here. I just kind of more think, Osborne's a bad grappler, and if he gets taken down by Rivera and held down, there's a pretty decent chance Rivera subs him. And if he doesn't get taken down and held down, he's probably going to finish Rivera at some point. Rivera is pretty fragile, not very athletic, not very fast. He's there to be hit. So, yeah, I think Osborne's probably the side. See, you want to take a crack at this fight? I take that as a pass. Okay. See, you want to take a crack at Choi Zalal?
Give me a sec.
All right. We'll skip Choi Zalal. We'll circle back to it. So we'll start with we're going to next up Molly McCann, Lara Procopio. Lags, any opinion here?
Not a super strong opinion. I think this is one of the tougher fights to call on the card. I kind of think that both girls can have success both in the striking and in the ground game. So I don't really hate a play on either side here. I know I've seen a lot of love for Procopio, and I get it. I was on Molly McCann in her last fight. Huge letdown spot. You were as well, I know. But yeah, I don't know. I like Laura. I like the output on the feet. I think she could outstrike her to a decision. And then if Molly's not too careful on the ground, I think Laura could snatch up a submission. So I don't hate the underdog in this spot.
Luke?
Yeah, so originally I went in thinking I was going to bet Procopio, and I don't want to say necessarily completely shifted my opinion, because if I was still to bet this fight, I would take the dog in Procopio. But I don't know, me and John kind of went back and forth, and it's ironic because now you're actually talking about betting Procopio, but you kind of talked me into, more of like this kind of physicality narrative with McCann. And I do kind of actually just think that's in play here, her willingness to go forward and throw shots. But it's like, then again, Procopio also, I think she landed like 5 less strikes than Hossa, and it was like 171 to 165. So it's like, she's going to throw output too. But I guess my thing is she's just really slow and not really technical. So I think if Molly wants to get inside, I think she's going to get inside and really just win in the pocket ultimately. Honestly, the big reason why I'm staying off of Procopio is because I can't necessarily trust her to go out here and like shoot like 4 or 5 takedowns. That's honestly the main reason why I'm staying off, because if she did, honestly, she might not even need to get all of them, because what we have seen from Molly when she gets taken down, granted against better girls, Santos, Robertson, whatnot, I get that, but she is getting controlled. She is getting put in precarious positions as well. So, I mean, I think if Procopio is able to land takedowns, I think she's going to be able to get a decent amount of top time. And even with me more so leaning to McCann on the feet, I still do think Procopio is going to be competitive on volume too. So I think that's the side for this fight, but this is usually, you guys, I love me and my little lower level dumpster fire, and I'm always down to jump in, but I can't do it. I'm going to go with Molly by decision.
Yeah, fair. I actually did play Procopio right before this podcast for 2 units. She's plus 146 on FanDuel right now. That's about 15 cents behind the rest of the market. Pretty much, I mean, it's not the only reason I played her, but, Sportsbet had minus 147 for McCann and plus one, and on Betfair had plus 146 for her. And so it's basically like a no big bet, which is kind of nice. And then in terms of the actual fight, I had mentioned to Luke, I was pretty concerned about the physicality edge that McCann might have, pretty much because, when I was taping this fight, I noticed Procopio had some major issues asserting her strength anywhere against Rosa. For whatever reason, I didn't really think about the fact that fight was at 135 and that Hosta is gigantic. So, once I realized that, it kind of changed my view of this a bit. I'm not 100% sure that Laura can wrestle Molly. I mean, Molly doesn't really defend takedowns at all, so it's very, very in play, and she will attempt takedowns at least. But on the feet, it's even if you favor McCann technically, just the striking upside, Luke touched on it a bit. Procopio landed 165 significant strikes against Rosa. That is a lot of strikes in a 3-round fight. And so it's can I trust McCann, who Molly McCann's best performance in the UFC to date at distance was Priscilla Cachahera, and she landed, I believe, 113 significant strikes in that fight, which, I mean, obviously that's good, but my point is we've seen upside from Procopio that far surpasses that. She's certainly got the better BJJ in this matchup. Whether or not she can land takedowns, I'm not 100% sure, but McCann's takedown defense is poor enough that I think it's within the range of possible outcomes. And kind of to Luke's point, I think if she gets her down, she probably dominates it there. So I don't really see a justification for this being worse than really evens, maybe slight lean to Procopio. See, how about you?
Yeah, I kind of like Procopia here. I think you guys talked about ground advantage she has. Even on the feet, they're going to throw some volume. I guess I kind of worry about how strong McCann is. I guess if she's just a little bit stronger. I don't have any plays on this fight. But, I think props this side.
All right. Now we're going to circle back to Yusuf Zalal and Sewon Choi. See, take it away.
Well, first, I just want to let everybody know 2 weeks ago was a real big disappointment, heartbreaking day. So I'm sorry to everybody who played McGregor. Not really, but I don't take anything that I said back. Rest in peace, Connor. It'll be a long fucking, emotional tour until he gets a W. Anyway, on to Choi. Free giveaway. If Choi wins, that's all he's got to do. $250, Venmo. Only Venmo. I don't want to fucking PayPal somebody. I have Venmo. So if you live in Canada, unfortunately, you're just shit out of luck. I think the last person, it was like $500, and I was like, dude, can I just Venmo you? And he had PayPal. I was like, God damn it. Anyway, yeah. So I'm playing Choi. Zalal's okay. I think Zalal kind of has to wrestle, which I don't really think he's that good at anyway. But I think in order for Zalal to cover his current price, he's going to have some type of grappling heavy approach. And I think Choi kind of, we're at like two ends of the spectrum here, where like Choi's level of competition for his first 2 fights are like very, very, high level competition, 2 top 15ers. And then he gets a fucking absolute dog shit bum. And then Zalal handed 3 absolute dog shit bums in a row. So I kind of think like some of the metrics are a little bit skewed from that. And I think Choi has good enough takedown defense and get ups where it's gonna not be easy for Zalal. And I think in a kickboxing match, I tend to favor Choi. I think he has skills. He breaks the clinch pretty aggressively. And I think the biggest thing is really Zalal. He relies so much on just his athleticism He keeps his hands down, and he really hasn't faced anybody who's as dangerous as a striker as Choi. And I think Choi does a pretty good job of cutting the cage, and he pressures. So it's going to take away, Zalal's kicking game. And I think the one thing, but you could watch the Lingo fight, and most of the Lingo fight where it's on the feet, Zalal's backing up, but Lingo can't really get off at distance. He really has to be in boxing range. And honestly, in that fight, he looked pretty fucking clueless. Whereas Choi's got pretty, he's pretty long when he throws. So I kind of just, honestly, I think Choi's going to catch him with the left hook when he backs him up against the cage and Zalal's trying to circle off. I really think that check left hook is going to be there, and Choi throws it pretty hard. So I just kind of think Choi is like evens, or, if you want to say Zalal is like 55-45, I'm all right with that, just because, he probably has some grappling upside if he approaches it that way. But I just think Choi is definitely the side here.
Luke, have you?
Yeah, so I think we were all pretty much on Choi at a pretty large plus number in the original iteration of this matchup. Unfortunately, there's still a decent plus number out there, but not, what was it, like plus 400 or something?
Plus 350.
Plus 350, yeah. So, I mean, I think I jumped in at a pretty big number as well. Not that big, but for me, I think C touched a lot of good points. For me, I do think there is value on Choi currently, but for me, I just want slightly a bit better of a number just because of that grappling considerations. Like, yeah, Evloev and Tucker are better wrestler grapplers than Zalal is. But what I will say with Zalal, I mean, he does attempt a decent amount of takedowns. I mean, he gets, I think, 2.63 takedowns per 15 minutes, in a fight where, he's going to be fighting a primary striker. If the guy watches any amount of tape, I would assume he's going to attempt 5 or 6 takedowns here. Now, whether he gets them all, that's kind of actually where I'm giving credence to Choi, because even if you go back and watch his fight with Evloev and Tucker, I think there was a lot of points in both those fights where he actually showed pretty solid first level takedown defense. It was just really that chain wrestling and grinding of a guy like Evloev that was, able to turn a corner, hit duck unders, those kind of things that were, Choi was just lost. No fault of his own. Evloev is probably one of the better grinders at 145 pounds. But so what my point is I don't think Zalal has that type of chain wrestling ability. Usually he's kind of jumping on a single, if he gets it, he'll try to circle. If he gets then he doesn't, either gets it or he breaks back out. So it really comes down to, can Choi stuff the initial shots and stuff them with consistency? And then I think, the merit to Choi comes a little bit more on the feet, but I still will give credit to Zalal, because I think for Choi to have success here, he has to cut off the cage. I think that's the one thing Zalal does really well, is not allow guys to do that. And that's why he's been able to pod shot from the outside. But I do think Choi will do a better job than some past opponents in cutting off the cage, which is why I think he is the value side. But I actually did move in on a play for this earlier today. I put 2 units on the over 2.5 at minus 150. I do think there's going to be some grappling, some grinding in this fight. And because I do think some of that early takedown defense is going to help hold up from Choi, I think there's going to be some more grinding in this fight too. In Zalal, I mean, at the end of the day, people sit there talk about the guy's jiu-jitsu, but at the end of the day, he's not submitting Peter Barrett. He's not submitting Austin Lingo. So not to wiki cap it, but it's like, I kind of find it hard to believe he's, submitting Choi, even when he lasted, damn near 3 rounds with Gavin Tucker. Is a pretty solid black belt too. So I think it might get a little dicey, because Choi is I think slightly live for a KO, but that's really the only finishing upside I see from either guy. So at 60%, where both guys' fights have hit over 7 out of 7 times in the UFC, I like it.
Yeah, I'm not going to add too much on the Choi side here. I think he's probably the value side, to be honest. Whether I play him or not, I haven't decided. I've looked at him by decision, plus 400. I guess the issue for me here is I do think Zalal should be the favorite. Like, I don't necessarily agree with, see that the striking favors Choi, to be honest. Now, I do agree with the idea that the metrics are a bit skewed because of the disparity in competition. But, it's hard for me to discount, what Zalal's done. His movement is really, it's something Choi really hasn't had to encounter yet with the kind of movement on the outside that Zalal's going to have there, pumping the jab. His landed strike ratio so far is 2.0 to 1. Like, that is pretty wild, a distance strike. Now, Choi's is pretty good too, and, C is right that, the level of competition between Tucker and Evloev to, Mokhtarian is massive. But I just can't discount what what Zalal has actually done, I should say. Like, he has won the fights he's won in the way that you'd expect someone who's pretty good to win. Now, to be clear, I think he's got a lot of big holes. I don't think he's much better than average anywhere, to be honest. But, him getting washed out by Topuria, I personally think Topuria is very, very, very good and is going to probably be in the top 15 sooner rather than later. So Zalal anywhere from like minus 150 to minus 185. I'd probably take the choice to have a plus 220. I had 2 units on him plus 355 first time this was booked, which is fucking annoying, but it is what it is. And I'm thinking of playing the decision line, but I don't know. We'll see. Lags, how about you?
Yeah, not a ton to add here. I think the only thing that's really given me pause on the choice side is that I would favor Zalal with the speed and the output if it stays striking for any amount of time, but that's about it, to be honest. I do agree that like he probably should be that minus 150, minus 170 favorite, but nothing higher than that because I don't see that high finishing upside for him.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, next fight of the night, we have got a banger. Carol Rosa taking on Jocelyn Edwards. Lags, you want to start?
Yes, so I actually moved in on a play on this earlier today. I have Carol Rosa by decision at plus 100, just 1 unit on that. I pretty much think she's a perfect stylistic counter matchup to Jocelyn. I think she's going to have significantly more output on the feet, and then whenever she wants, mix in the takedown here or there. She has the minor P's and Q's on the mat to not get armbarred from Jocelyn, which I really don't rate as that high of an opportunity. So I like Carol Rosa a lot in the spot.
See?
You're muted. Muted, C.
Yeah, I don't really care too much about this. Rosa's okay. Edward, honestly, she probably sucks, but if she can get some type of meme type armbar, wouldn't be super surprising. I think Rosa her ground game is suspect. But yeah, I mean she'll throw some out, but I don't know. It's a pass. I'm not paying any juice on this fight, and I also don't trust Edwards enough. It's just not a good enough number for me.
Luke?
Yeah, so I'm on the same play as Lags. I played Hossa by decision today as well. Lags kind of hit it on. I just think it's kind of a tough matchup for her. But what I will say, in a WMMA, well, considering I'm also playing this by decision, in a WMMA fight that I don't think finishes, I do think Hossa around like minus 250, 260 is getting a tad ridiculous, to be honest. But at the end of the day, I don't really think that whole kind of, bull nature of Edwards that she's shown at times is going to work against Hossa, just because I think Hossa is at least a bit more technical. Everything she throws is a bit more crisp, where, Edwards is kind of your rock'em sock'em robots. And then the other 50% of the time she's going to try to play the outside game. But I would actually say that Hossa plays the outside game better than she does. And then as Lags touched on too, I think Hossa's probably live to land a takedown or two, but is able to be defensively responsible and stay out of subs. But one thing I will give Edwards credit for, she seems like a pretty tough chick, which was a decent sized component me making this, because Rosa does throw a lot of volume. I think she dropped Procopio, I think, in their fight in the 3rd round or something like that. So she's shown a tad bit of pop, but it's another one of these spots, chalky fighter on one end, take their most likely path right around evens. I've had a lot of success with these plays, so I'm just going to keep riding them.
Yeah, this fight's kind of amusing because Lags and I have been chatting earlier in the week, and I was like, if it hits minus 150, I'm jumping in on the Hossa money line, and Lags like, yeah, me too. And he sends me a message right before I had a call for work, and he's like, it looks like we're gonna get that number, John. I looked at it, it's like minus 150. I'm like, oh shit. I'll play it when I get off the phone. And so I'm on the phone for about 40 minutes, and I hop off, and it's back to minus 185, and now we're sitting at minus 245. I guess my view is, I think standing, again, it's like I hate to make everything a stats thing, but Hossa's pace it's stupid strong. Like she hits pretty hard for people in MMA. Her pace is ridiculous. And the bottom line is Jocelyn Edwards. Like, let's be real here. If Wu Nanan had any kind of like real technique, she was tagging her on the feet pretty easily. She's just not a very good striker. Doesn't carry much pop, and she doesn't get much leverage behind her punches. It's a step down in competition for Hossa. The only concern for me, and the reason that I didn't lay it when it was up at minus 185 is, I had bet Montano here against Hossa when that was originally booked. And if you go back and look at, the couple times we've seen Hossa on her back regionally, it's been really ugly. Now, it's been a while since that happened. And, so it's obviously very possible that she made adjustments. But like, I don't expect Edwards to ragdoll her. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Edwards is a very good wrestler, but she has attempted takedowns here and there. And like, am I trying to lay minus 200 on someone who could potentially just get stuck on her back like a turtle? Not really. So it's a pass for me. But I think Hossa's going to beat her up pretty bad, to be honest. We move on. We got Justin James taking on Devontae Smith. Another fight where I had a bet in the original iteration. I was pretty heavy on Alex De Silva against Devontae Smith. I don't really rate Devontae Smith at all, to be honest. Like, he carries good pop. He's a decent boxer, but the guy's got massive, massive holes. First of all, I'm not ready to say he's chinny yet, but he went out pretty soft against Worthy, which was pretty concerning. He's fought a lot of bums. He made John Gunther look like Khabib Nurmagomedov originally. So just, a lot of issues for him. Now, down the other side of that, like I said, he's a decent boxer and he hits very hard. I think he's got something like 10 or 9 KOs in the first round. He's probably going to keep a higher pace than James here. He's gone 4 rounds before, so it's possible he just out-cardios James as well. I think, though, for me, while I think Smith's the more skilled fighter, there are a couple of obvious places where I think James can win this fight. Number one, James is very reliable to go into the pocket and swing with you early. He hits very, very hard. And like I mentioned, Smith going out as soft as he did to Worthy was extremely concerning for me. Number two, James is actually a very good wrestler. The unfortunate thing is he just doesn't seem to have the cardio to maintain that pace. But I am not certain, but very confident that if James decides he's going to hit takedowns, he's going to hit takedowns here. The question is what happens when he gets it there. I have a feeling, and C will touch on it in a bit, that James' sub could be in play. He had a couple subs regionally. I had been thinking about playing James round 1 KO, and then the more I think about it, the more it's like, a smart person, if they're James, will go out there and hit takedowns. And as much as people might want to think James' win condition is front-loaded here, I gassed out James landing a takedown in round 3 might be able to hold Smith down. Like, I think Smith's grappling is that bad. So I do think there's a good bit of value on James. He might just get out cardioed again or get deaded in the first round, but plus 250 against the guy who hasn't proven anything is crazy. Legs, what do you think?
Yeah, I took, actually, as soon as this line dropped on FanDuel, I took a quarter unit stab on the round 1 KO plus 800. It was actually $2 off everywhere else on the market, but not just that. I just kind of think that James' win condition actually is more front loaded. I can see grabbing edge late. I get that. But my thing is that I think James is going to come out like a bat out of hell like he always does. And we saw his last short notice fight against Frank Camacho. He did exactly just that. Had enough cardio just to get him out in the first round. And I think he could do that very well here. So plus 800, quarter unit stab.
See, what do you think?
Yeah, I was originally thinking, round 1 knockout, and then I looked into it a little bit more, and regionally, James has gotten some subs, and if he's smart, right, he'll go for a takedown, and honestly, I don't think that like Smith getting insta subbed is like out of the question. I was Silva was going to be a fucking massive play. So I'm pretty upset about that. At least, he's reliable to get takedowns. But yeah, I mean, I think James, I took some stabs on just sub at plus 1100. But I mean, I kind of think he's the value side. I do think his win condition probably is a little bit front loaded, only because it's, 6 days notice, 7 days notice. But I mean, Smith, he's all right. He probably has a power advantage, better striker. But I mean, James will come in there, bite down and swing. And honestly, the Worthy fight is pretty concerning. Smith just, I don't know. I don't know if that fight was like rigged or what, but
it was bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of wild. And I think Smith is coming off like some surgery. He tore his Achilles. So, I mean, who knows? It's a pretty big injury to tear your Achilles. Yeah, I mean, James plus 250. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if James gets up to like plus 300, plus 315. It's normally how these things go. But yeah, I wouldn't limit myself to just, knockout. Honestly, if I was playing a prop, I would probably just play round one like flat, the plus 550, just because I think the sub's pretty low.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so I haven't really went back and forth on this one, but it's more so just deciding on what I'm gonna play because I want to play James because I think there is value on his line straight, but I just always, this matchup aside, I just really have a problem laying my money on someone who I'm not confident necessarily has 15 minutes of gas. But to your point, John, he might not necessarily need a full-blown 15 minutes of gas if he can go out here and land takedowns and just lay on top of them or advance into dominant positions. Like, he might just be able to coast on top. But if he goes, rabies Janes in the first round too, because he's like, hey, man, I'm coming in on a week's notice. I don't have 15 minutes of gas. I'm going to let it fly and see what happens for better or for worse. I still think he's got a decent shot in a swinging contest against Smith because I don't think Smith is his defense is very good. I agree with you too, John, that I would say Smith is probably the better pure boxer, but in a big pocket slugfest, I mean, throw that technical shit out the window. I mean, Justin James has got hooks from hell, so I think there's upside there. But then to C's point, if he does wrestle, I think he potentially could be live for a sub as well. So it's like I'm bouncing all around here. It's like, do I just play him straight, cover my ass? Do I just take a big number on a KO if he decides to go life or death? Does he fight with some sort of intelligence? Does he go to wrestle, which I think he probably can move into dominant positions, potentially get a sub there. So I'd kill myself, on a KO. So I've just I still really don't know how I'm gonna bet it, but I will be playing James because I just think the line is off. At the end of the day, when you have a guy who largely is a first round type of guy where that's his win condition and that guy's 75%, as a bettor, that just never makes sense to me. Maybe he meets that price because he meets his win condition. Great. I'm down to fade those guys, long term. So I might take an L this one. Like I said, might go life or death with them, get knocked out. Wouldn't be shocked. But at the end of the day, I think James has more paths and more ability to drastically outperform his price than Smith.
Yeah, and like one other thing, and I'm not trying to like wiki cap it or anything, but like, look, Devontae Smith being minus 1,000 against Worthy was crazy. But like the books and the market felt James should close as evens with Gavin Tucker. He was only plus 150 at close and opened as a favorite against Gabriel Benitez. Like, I'd very confidently take Benitez and Tucker at even money against Devontae Smith. Like, those would both be pretty big plays personally. So, I don't know. I kind of think the market's maybe overreacting a bit to James here and just looking at all those Smith KOs. But anyway, we move on. We have another decent fight. Luke, start with you here. Timur Valiev taking on Martin Day.
Yeah, so another one of our fine cancellations. One thing I will say off of the top, Day got some balls coming in here taking this fight. 0-3 in the UFC. I put out, he might be fighting for his job. Maybe Dana, gives him a bit of a nudge for coming in on short notice, even though he gets his ass kicked here, and they give him another shot. But Actually, I still don't hate Martin Day. I've always been kind of a bit of a Martin Day truther. Unfortunately, that hasn't, aged aged well over the UFC. But in general, I still don't think he's that bad of a fighter. I just think he's one of those guys who doesn't necessarily use his range effectively and consistently over the course of 15 minutes, which gets him in trouble, which I think gets him in trouble in this matchup. He actually defends takedowns at like 76%, which is pretty solid. But also hasn't really faced kind of like a grinder like Valiev, who's shown the ability to get inside, not the greatest, pure takedown guy per se, but still kind of has that Russian coast, that Russian grindy type nature to him. But today's credit, man, he's going to be much, much bigger here. But at 7 days notice, man, I think it's one of these fights where Day actually might make it a little dicey interesting. I think he's going to go for broke and, try to get Valiev out. And, he may. I mean, I don't think Valiev is necessarily has the greatest striking defense in the world. But in general, just looking at it overall, I think Valiev's a pretty bad matchup for Martin Day. So I don't know if this was necessarily the greatest career move, but maybe it will be if he sits there and lands like a spinning back kick on the dude and puts Valiev out. So I do think the line's probably roughly correct. I am honestly considering playing Valiev by decision around like that plus 180 number because Day, despite getting knocked out by Davey Grant, that fight still went relatively pretty long, almost the distance. Anderson Dos Santos, he kind of put himself into that guillotine. In general, I think Day's proven to be largely defensively responsible on the ground. Not great, but defensively responsible, and has shown decent durability in firefights. So I think Valiev by decision could be a sneaky good play.
Yeah. God, this is like another fight where it's like I think there might be slight value on the dog, but I don't have much interest in playing it. I had bet arse against Valiev pretty much and I think Day can actually cause some of the problems for Valiev that arse I thought could. Day's a decent boxer. I actually think he's got decent hands. He's got great output on the feet, and he's a bit bigger than Valiev is. The real problem with Martin Day is, well, one, he can't grapple at all if he gets put on his back, obviously. Two, I thought one of the things that was going to benefit ours pretty significantly was he was a southpaw, and so those low kicks from orthodox into a southpaw just aren't as effective. And Day is not. He's orthodox, and he doesn't check kicks very much. I think they're going to cause him big problems. And like I said, it's like he's got good skills with his hands, but he doesn't seem like he's very durable. Grant seemed to be making him look pretty uncomfortable a few times in that fight, and if Valiev can get him down, he can probably hold him there. I think Valiev is the better fighter. I think minus 200 to minus 250 is probably fair. I think the line where it is right now is a bit extreme, though. How about you?
No super strong opinion here. Valiev probably wins this. No, I don't. Nothing strong here.
Yeah, I was looking to play the under. I don't know. I kind of think that, Day's coming in here on short notice, probably fighting for his UFC lifeline. So if you're going to go out, right, try and go out getting 50K. Yeah. Valiev, in his last fight, I mean, he was pretty aggressive right off the bat, pretty much going rabies. So, I mean, I think there's some value on it. But that's really it. I think Valiev should win, but I'm not laying any type of juice on him. Fuck that.
Yeah, agreed. And next fight up, we got Slow Mike Rodriguez taking on Danilo Marquez. Danilo Marquez. I bet Khadisi Ibragimov quite big against Danilo Marquez. Maybe that's my fault for betting Khadisi Ibragimov. I think Marquez is one of the worst fighters to ever be signed to the UFC. With that said, I'll give him credit for one thing. He understands he can't win a striking fight, and so he either stays all the way out where he can't get hit, or he's pushing the pace and attempting takedowns. I don't think his wrestling is particularly good. I, to be honest, was thinking about playing Rodriguez, but it's like I played Ibragimov against him, but then I look back at the John Alon fight. John Alon is not a good grappler. He's not a good wrestler, and the fact that he got Rodriguez down 4 times is pretty concerning to me. Like, I'm not interested really in playing Marquez, but that's enough that, like, I don't know. I don't really want any part of Rodriguez at minus 250. Plus, I mean, let's be real here for a second. And I'm just gonna say this. Everybody keeps fucking saying Mike Rodriguez was fucking robbed his last fight. Don't get fucking Kimura from the bottom. How about that? Like that's human error happens. It happens in every sport. Deal with it. Getting Kimura when you're in side control is your fault. It's not the referee's fault. And the fact that he got Kimura from the bottom while he was in side control is pretty concerning against the guy who the only thing he has is jiu-jitsu, really. Not that it's anything special. But, yeah, I just don't think Rodriguez is very reliable. Not really looking to play either side here. Lags, how about you?
Yeah, so this fight actually rounds out my 3 props for me article. I actually think this is a perfect spot for Mike Rodriguez first round knockout at plus 200. I mean, 9 of his 11 wins have come in first round knockout. And pretty much I think the longer this fight is extended, that Danilo probably is having success and Mike is not having the striking success that I think he's having. So I'm going to touch this shit show of a fight. I think Mike Rodriguez KO, if you want to lay that slight juice, minus 140, but I like the KO round 1 plus 200.
Yeah, I don't mind that. See, how about you?
Yeah, I got burned on last time too. Yeah, whatever. I don't know. Fuck this fight. Yeah, I mean Rodriguez. Honestly, I'm rooting for Marquez so that like maybe he's like really like decently fadeable in his next matchup. You know, like give me fucking. I don't know. I gotta look at the division, but pretty much anybody, minus 125 or something versus him, and I'll be happy. So yeah, hopefully round 1 sub for Marquez, and then we could have the round 1 effect where he's like minus 300 versus a living body next time.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so Mike Rodriguez joins the Helen Keller committee of big guys who don't know how to utilize their reach. So he's sitting right next to Maurice Green. You guys know if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, that's like probably one of my biggest pet peeves are just big, long guys that cannot utilize their reach. He just can't. He does it. He does it at spurts with consistency. He gets hit a few times and it just goes out the window. And he just starts getting tagged on entry of guys much smaller than him, just can come into the pocket and smoke him. But to Lags' point, if he cannot knock out a guy like Danilo Marquez in the first 5 minutes, I don't like to talk shit about fighters, but this guy needs to really reevaluate what he's doing with his career. But if that doesn't come, I actually think this is probably one of the more intriguing live betting spots of the card because as you touched on, Legs, if he does not put this guy out within the first 5 minutes, to me, that's saying something has drastically went wrong for Mike Rodriguez, in my opinion. Marquez might be a good live betting spot. I know it sounds terrible, John, because I kind of agree with you that he's probably, one of the worst fighters to ever grace the UFC octagon. But at the end of the day, big guy can't use your tools. There's 3 different fights that suggest that you can't grapple. Your takedown defense is 40%. You're a fish out of water out of your back. Not to mention that this guy also trains at Joe Lozon's gym, which I think is just kind of embarrassing. Like, how do you go train at Joe Lozon's gym and you can't grapple, bro? But anyway, not trying to shit on Mike Rodriguez. I think the guy, if he was able to, put a few things together, he'd have a little bit of upside, but there's just multiple data points to suggest that he can't. So, as our boy Warrior says, how in the fuck are you putting Mike Rodriguez in your parlays? Well, he said that with Smith, but I say that for this one. I don't think you can sit there and throw a guy with largely 1-win condition pretty early in your parlays. I think the line's probably a little off. Am I betting Marquez? Hell no. So, yeah, as Lags touched on, play a prop with Mike Rodriguez early or look to live bet Marquez.
Yeah, agreed. So the next fight up, some people will say the fight after is the people's main event. But to me, a match for pink slips between Michael Johnson and Clay Guida is the real one's main event. Lags, do you have an opinion here?
I'll be quick because I know you have a strong opinion here. I actually was leaning a play on the under 2.5 at plus 180. I guess the only thing is like keeping me off of that is neither of these guys have finished anybody recently. So it's tough to really it's tough to really like back a violence bet here when both of these guys haven't finished anybody as of late. But I do think styles make matchups, and I think that this is a good matchup for a violence bet. But I'm laying off.
C, MJ, Guida, anything?
Oh. I mean, I'm playing MJ round 1 knockout. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't pay the juice on Michael Johnson, but I do think that, like, I mean, I don't know, how does Clay Guida like win in 2021? He's like almost 40. I mean, I guess I don't know. I think MJ can sprawl and brawl, but the guy did fucking lose to I don't know, Stevie Ray.
Stevie Ray.
Yeah, sounds like a porn star or something. Stevie Ray. Who the fuck loses to Stevie Ray? Yeah, I mean, I'm playing round 1 knockout. I think, he looked good versus, what's his face? Brazilian dude who beat Bobby Green.
Moises.
Hey, he looked good.
He lost to Bobby Green.
He lost to Bobby Green, C.
He lost to Bobby Green, C, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, MJ looked good versus him in the first round. He looked all right, and then, whatever, he got, he went full Michael Johnson. But, yeah, I think round 1 plus 650. I mean, dude, that's, Jim Miller hurt Guida pretty bad that first round, and then, I guess Clay just dived straight into a fucking guillotine. I know John talked about it. Magic has been messaging me about it too. Like, oh, Michael Johnson sub. I don't know. Maybe it could happen, but yeah, I wouldn't pay any juice. I think round 1 knockout's nice. Plus 700 there. Run it,
Luke.
Honestly, when Michael Johnson hit minus 200, I thought about it. It just like pains me to say it out loud, but I think it's a great spot for him. But like literally, if you just run down like his last 7 fights, he's had moments in all those fights and has managed to essentially blow them in some capacity outside of the Andre Fili fight, which he almost also blew, by the way, where that one went to split decision. But he's just one of these guys that's honestly just frustrating for me, just because I think the guy has all the tools in the world and for whatever reason can't put it together. The only thing I could assume is that it's a mental issue, because I still, like I said, collegiate wrestling background, one of the best sprawls. I still think Michael Johnson probably actually has some of the fastest and best boxing in the division, if not in the UFC, when he's putting it together. But, guys put pressure on him and he slows down, which is kind of what makes me a little nervous here, because that's one thing that Guida, will bring to some extent is pressure. But if I just don't know how Michael Johnson can mess this one up, though. Like, I think it's largely a pretty good fight for him. But I can't in good conscience bet Michael Johnson, even though I think minus 200's a great line.
So I have one play official and possibly a second coming on this fight. I took the stab on Guida at plus 188. I have a long storied history of losing money on Michael Johnson fights. I'm someone who has always been a big believer in Michael Johnson's talent, and I generally tend to poo-poo narratives about people being head cases. And then the Darren Elkins fight happened, and then the Stevie Ray fight happened, and then the Thiago Moises fight happened. And at this point, I don't even know what to make of him. And what I can say is, look, Guida's washed to shit. But Guida just fought Bobby Green and took him down 3 times and had like 7 minutes of control in that fight. Like, if Guida's getting Green down, he can probably get MJ down. And like, to your point, Luke, MJ in theory has the tools that should make him a decent defensive grappler, except he seems to just panic when it hits the mat. Like, how did Andre Fili get his back? How did Darren Elkins get his back? Like, it's just weird things tend to happen.
And quick, too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, at plus 188, unless Johnson finishes him early, I think at some point the takedowns are going to start coming for Guida. And if they do, like, if Guida lands 3 to 4 takedowns here, it's going to look like an even fight. Like, I just don't see any way that it doesn't. So I have a unit on the plus 188. Now, C touched on it. I am thinking about pulling the trigger on Johnson's sub. I think Guida's been guillotined like 4 or 5 times in the UFC. And never forget Michael Johnson, the legend that he is, trying to pull a guillotine on Khabib Nurmagomedov. That happened. And the truth of the matter is, Johnson, every time Guida gets stung, he sticks his neck into a guillotine, literally every single time. And so it's like, I think that's like plus 1,400 Johnson sub or something like that. And I think the opportunity, I think so. You bring it up. What is it?
Yeah, I got it. I'll look it up right now.
Plus 1,400.
Yeah. So
yeah, 1,400. Yep.
And I'm reasonably convinced that if Guida isn't having success, at some point he's going to panic shoot a takedown off a 2, and he doesn't defend guillotines well. So I think that's an interesting spot. I have a unit on Guida, and I have a unit on Guida, and I am probably going to take a small stab on the Johnson submission prop. Anyway. That's the one.
What's even crazier, honestly, is the submission round props for Johnson too. You want to hear those?
Yeah. What's round 1 sub?
3,100.
3,100. Take a small poke. Next up is the casuals main event. We got Diego Ferreira taking on Neil Dariush. Lags, what do you think here?
Yeah, it was a good description. Honestly, this fight is pretty much everybody's fight of the night, which I kind of agree with that as well. The Pantoja fight. So this joins the list of fights that I think are, like I touched on earlier, the harder fights to call on the card. I think that both of these guys can have success in both striking and in the ground game. But honestly, I think that Dariush, for the most part, has him covered. My only concern kind of is if that gas tank issue comes up again, and I think CDF pressure, the pace could wear on him late in this fight. So I was actually taking a look at. I don't mind Dariush by decision. It's plus 350. But other than that, no strong things. It's going to be a great high level fight that I'd rather just sit back and watch.
See, how about you?
Yeah, I don't have any. I have some pokes and some props. I played Dariush round 1 knockout and CDF round 3. I do worry about, I think Benny's better fighter, but I think CDF could pace him. And honestly, it's kind of odd. Wouldn't you think their ages are swapped? Dariush should be fucking 7 years older than CDF.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. But it'll be a telling fight. I mean, if CDF really puts it on him, then then CDF's in it. But I think Dariush is still pretty fucking dangerous early. So yeah.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, no strong opinion from a side for me. It's definitely one I'm really looking forward to. I do have kind of this hipster angle of I think this fight goes over 2.5. The only reason I'm not playing it is because I don't like the price. Because there are a lot of things to suggest that this fight potentially could go under, just based on.
I actually was looking at the under, to be honest, Luke. So
yeah, I didn't. Like I said, it's more of a hipster type take where I think that in a lot of these other fights where guys have been going out more so in Dariush fights, there hasn't been as much grappling, where I think there's going to be at least a decent amount of grappling to limit some of the bigger exchanges. So that kind of fuels my more so narrative. And I also don't think either guy's getting subbed. I would say if there's someone getting knocked out, I would say Dariush probably, but I don't know. Both guys still hit harder, defensively fought. So that's kind of why I'm staying off of it too. But it just has this feeling of, 7.5 minutes back and forth, big exchanges, Dariush doing well in the clinch. CDF might be able to, get a takedown or something. Back and forth exchange, back and forth on the feet. And it goes over and nobody dies. But, I don't really have any great, reference points for this because, both guys have finished dudes. Dariush. One thing I will say for Dariush, though, people talk about his chin all the time. I mean, in 24 UFC fights, dude's only been knocked out 3 times. So I think that's kind of interesting. Yeah, been hurt, wobbled on a few more occasions than 3. I concede that. But in general, the guy's been fighting largely pretty stiff competition over the years, so it'll only get finished, 3 times. Don't think CDF is the biggest hitter in the world, more of the volume type of guy. So I know, John, you're going to be pretty strong on your side on this one, but if gun to my head, if I was to bet, I actually like the blood pressure over 2.5 here.
Yeah. So it's like, it's hard to like kind of like enunciate my thoughts here. Like, I'm not like super, super passionate about Dariush, but like what I'll say is I've seen like takes from like at least several people that I respect. Like CDF's a top 5 fighter in lightweight. And like, I just don't think there's really the only thing that's top 5 about him is his pace. Like that's really it. The guy he got wobbled by Nelson. He got wobbled by Taysimov. Obviously DP is a huge hitter, so you don't take too much out of it. But like basically what he's best at is just going forward and throwing a lot. But like, he's not a better striker than Dariush. Like Dariush was beating Edson Barboza like a fucking drum before he got knocked out. Like that happened. He won a kickboxing match with Michael Johnson. The gassiness is a concern. Like, could he gas out here and then CDF paces him? Yeah, that could happen. But yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about his BJJ magic. I'm just meaning a top 5 lightweight. But in terms of like everywhere else, like I kind of agree with Lags and C. Like I think Dariush pretty much skill for skill has him covered. Like, yeah, if they put on a Giz and decided to have a grappling match, I'd favor CDF. But MMA grappling is a bit different. I'm not saying CDF's a different, like he is a different fighter to an extent than he was when he fought Dariush the first time. But like he's 36 years old and we've seen him get ragdolled here. And like with CDF's pressure, like if he goes forward and they get into a swinging match, is anybody really confident that CDF's going to win that swinging match? Like he could, but I don't really see a way that you can like reasonably cap CDF better than like evens just based on the fact that Dariush is really the better fighter like everywhere here. BJJ is a wash, but in terms of wrestling and grappling, I favor Dariush. The gas tank and pace is a concern. It's a major concern. But I was interested in Dariush. It was plus 105 earlier today. Now he's back to like favorite money or evens. I'm still kind of interested in him. Like, look, he's been hurt before. He's obviously been brutally KO'd before, and he's gassed before. So I'm not really trying to play him as a favorite, but I do think, I don't think there's some kind of massive value on CDF here. I think if anything, for me at least, I think it's Dariush or bust. And that's really, that's really it. And like I said, it's like CDF's been put out cold before too. And, he got wobbled by Kyle Nelson, was in serious danger in that fight. So, yeah, I mean, at the moment, it's a pass. I am somewhat interested in Dariush, hoping that line moves further to dog money. Maybe Dariush KO1, I think would be interesting. But, yeah, that's my take anyway. So we move on. We got a shit fight. Cody Stamann, Asker. I did not have time to tape Asker. I was kind of interested in fading Stamann against Andre Ewell. Not fading, I should say, but I thought there might have been some value on Ewell there. I was going to play Marab against Stamann, but that fell through too. So I don't really have much to say about Asker since I know nothing about him. Lags, you want to take it away?
Same. Pass.
See?
Pass.
Luke, you're here for all of us.
I taped him. Hey, where's the, we need those like radio buttons or whatever. No, I actually don't think the Askar guy is terrible. Like he's not a bum. I would actually say he's probably a pretty well-rounded regional type of guy. Like his wrestling is decent. He'll come forward, he'll throw strikes, but it's one of these spots, man, where it's just a levels kind of fight, where I think this Askar guy could make things potentially interesting early on. But once again, short notice, Stamann pushes a pretty decent pace. His metrics are awesome. Like I know he's like primarily known for his wrestling, but like I said, his output is solid. His accuracy solid. And what I will say, even in that Brian Kelleher fight, I think his hands looked phenomenal in that fight. I think that's one of the better performances we've seen from Cody Stamann. Not to mention that Cody Stamann's fought a lot of tough guys too that aren't particularly easy to look good against. So I think that needs to be noted. But ultimately what I'm getting to is if I was able to get Stamen around like minus 300, I would have maxed him personally, but he's like minus 450 now. A guy historically who doesn't have a lot of finishing upside, but to me, it's kind of really Cody Stamen however he wants it. I think he can outstrike this guy 100%, but I also think that's probably giving this dude his best chance at clipping him. I think just the levels on the ground here are massive. I think Cody could just grind him, pass, take him down. I actually think it could be a Ricky Simone Pirello situation where a guy who's historically not known for finishing, I think is actually pretty live for a finish here. So I might be looking to poke Stamen inside the distance.
Yeah, fair. Thanks for the breakdown, Luke, since none of us were able to tape Asker. We move on. We got a real fun fight. Manel Kape making his debut from Ryzen, taking on Alexandre Pantoja. I bet Pantoja here, minus 125 for 2 units. I'll say this. I think Kape's actually a pretty good striker. If it stays standing for 15 minutes, it's going to be pretty even. Pantoja might be able to outpace him, but I actually think Kape's a better boxer, and him stinging Pantoja is certainly in play. The reason – well, I'll get to that in a second, but where I think there's a chasm here is the grappling. Pretty much every time we've seen Kape get on his back in, Ryzen, he was dominated there. And, Pantoja is an excellent grappler. The problem with Pantoja throughout his career is he just doesn't really lean on the grappling much. I bet him against Figueiredo, and he decided that the best option in that fight was to go and exchange bombs in the pocket. And, I worry that that's going to happen here. It's the only reason I haven't maxed it. I honestly think Pantoja, one takedown and sub is extremely in play here. I think he can – I think if he grapples heavily, he's probably like minus 400 in hindsight. But he's also virtually completely untrustworthy at this point, given what we've seen from him. And so it's 2 units. Like I said, I would have gone way bigger on him if he was at all reliable to follow a game plan. But then he probably wouldn't be at the line he's at if that was the case. But I do think the grappling gap is wide enough. Plus, it is a fairly substantial step up in skill for Kape. Kape fought Horiguchi and got smoked by him a few years back, but he was younger, and Horiguchi obviously very legit. But Pantoja's been fighting killers for years, so I just have to favor him on that. Step up, massive grappling edge. Lex, how about you?
Yeah, I think you actually hit it all, perfectly, John, to be honest with you. I think that the reason why I'm not on Pantoja is just what you touched on. I can't trust him enough to go out and grapple here. But just similar in the Dariush fight, I was looking to the under 2.5 here at minus 135. Still might end up on it, but just pass for now. I think it's going to be a high pace, high action to fight.
See?
Yeah, I got in on the under 2.5. I think at like minus 110 when it first came out. I was expecting it to. Yeah, I was expecting it to move a little bit more. So, I mean, it's whatever on the price. Pantoja, I have a little bit of round 1 sub because I kind of think if he comes out with an intelligent game plan, he's probably looking to grapple heavy early. And, I kind of think we're in the realm of a pretty quick sub if he grapples. So I'm happy to take a little bit of that round 1 sub. I think I got like plus 750, plus 300 sub also. I'd rather just have that than I guess any other kind of scenario. Even though I think his money line price, whatever it is, I think it's like minus 130 right now. I think it's fine. Pantoja's proven. He is, he's really the only portion. He's really the only side who has like massive upside here. So no problem if you're on Pantoja straight. Yep.
Luke?
Yeah, so not to play, I guess, contrarian, but I guess I do give Kape some credit. Once again, I'm still picking Pantoja, but I think his striking is just really good, man. It's obviously the big consideration of the fight, as you guys touched on, is the grappling. If he goes to it, there's clear holes. Like obviously Kyoji, solid, former top 5 guy. It's like, but then I went back and I watched the Luka Sasaki fight. And I'm like, bro, Kape, come on, buddy. But at the end of the day, Pantoja also still only, gets a little over 1 takedown per 15 minutes, as you touched on. He's not necessarily a guy who's reliable to come out here and shoot 4 or 5 shots. However, ironically, a lot of his fights still do end up on the ground in some way, shape, or form. I was on him against Askarov, and so maybe I'm just kind of jaded, but I thought he fought like a moron in that fight, in a very winnable fight, in my opinion. But yeah, I think the edge is pretty clear for him to land takedowns here, as the grappling edge is large. But honestly, I guess this is where I part ways a tad. Like if he's not out here grappling and he's just going like war Pantoja, honestly, I think Cape can just stick on the outside and counter him, to be honest. I'm not saying Cape wins the fight because he could lose on optics, potentially get clipped. Obviously, Pantoja hits hard, but if that's the kind of fight this is, I think Cape makes him swing and miss quite a bit. So in that scenario, once again, for me to trust a guy who's just consistently not necessarily went to the offensive wrestling and not shown that, the price is, I get it. You're not, paying -200 on him here. So I get potentially conceding that. But for me, I'm really just trying to make the adjustment in 2021 of just trying to not back fighters who I think are going to potentially do stupid shit that's going to limit their win conditions. So that's just me, once again, picking Pantoja. I don't hate the bets, win conditions there, but I think this Cape guy's striking is pretty solid.
Yeah, agreed. And we move on. Co-main event. We got Corey Sandhagen taking on Frankie Edgar. I played Edgar. 1 unit, plus 362. Look, obviously Edgar is moving into shot territory, but the bottom line is I could keep it simple here and just say someone who defends takedowns at 30% should never be -450 against someone who attempts a lot of takedowns. The truth of the matter is, even though Edgar hasn't landed as many takedowns in recent years, that's in part because he's also been fighting guys who just are not easy to take down. Munoz, elite takedown defense, Holloway, elite takedown defense. He got killed standing by Korean Zombie before he ever had a chance to really even go to the wrestling. Same thing with the Ortega fight, really, and for obvious reasons, he wasn't looking to get Ortega there. I pretty much think here, I don't want to say he can get takedowns whenever he wants, because obviously, the reach and getting inside Sandhagen's reach isn't going to be easy. But I think him getting, somewhere in that 3 to 5 takedowns and getting a lot of clinch control time here is very live. And if he does that, like if he lands 5 takedowns, even if he doesn't keep him flat on the mat like he did to Yair Rodriguez, like it's a close fight. It's a very, very, very close fight. And like that's in play. And even if it's standing longer than I would like it to be, like it's not like the only guys to really wash him out. Actually, it's really only Zombie. Like even the Holloway fight, like he lost that fight cleanly, but he had a couple really close rounds with Holloway, and Max is kind of just like a better version of Corey. Not that I expect him to outstrike Corey. Like, look, if he stays standing for 12 minutes, he's going to probably lose the fight. I just more mean I don't think he necessarily gets just completely blown away on the feet. And it's the kind of fight where he can maybe keep it close enough that it take a couple well-timed takedowns, give him rounds. So, yeah, like I love Sandhagen. I'm a big, big fan. I played him big against Marlon. I just, at this number, especially knowing that I have a guy who's a pretty good wrestler, I'm just willing to take the stab. Lex, how about you?
Yeah, so play contrarian here, usually. So I'm actually on Corey by knockout. I have 1 unit on that at plus 250. So you did touch on the point that, yeah, Corey does have a 30% takedown defense, but I think in this matchup, like you touched on, the height and the reach are going to be tougher for Frankie to get in on Corey alone. Not to mention that I think Corey has decent games in the get up game and the fact that he'll be able to get up fast enough. Now, I don't like that he gives up his back, but I'm not so sure that Frankie's going to try and put in hooks here. He's probably just going to look for control on the cage. So I think that pretty much as long as this fight stays on the feet, I think that Corey's going to be able to piece him up and probably find a knockout. I wouldn't be too shocked. So plus 250, I like it.
See?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you with the Frankie angle. I mean, Corey, pretty easy to take down. Yeah, I mean, the line's probably wide, but at the same time, I just, I don't know. I'm not really too interested in playing. I guess if you were playing Edgar, why wouldn't you just fucking take the plus 500 decision line? I don't think Corey's getting finished, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not too interested, honestly, in this fight, just in general. I'd rather see like Corey, TJ. That interests me. Frankie doesn't. Frankie Corey just doesn't really interest me much.
Luke?
Yeah, so I haven't played anything yet, but I guess I'm more so with lags here. I guess the big difference for me and why I think Sandhagen finishes him, like if you go back and watch the Munoz fight, I think largely it was just because Munoz was just following him around. I don't think he really effectively cut off the cage, so that allowed Frankie to, get that counter game going, pot shot from the outside, and even counter from going backwards as well, where I don't think it's just kind of a different game with Sandhagen too. Like I know Max obviously that fight, so there's a reference point to, maybe play contrarian to what I'm going to say, but I just feel like Corey, despite him not being a one-shot guy, he's just been a guy who's consistently shown to go forward, who's just not going to let guys off of the hook. So I think it's really in those exchanges where I think Frankie potentially could actually have takedown success. It's when, he's overextending on shots and hits like duck unders. I think that's actually where Frankie's best path in terms of the wrestling is. But I'm more so on the side that even if Frankie does get takedowns, I don't think he's going to be able to get any sort of significant control time. And I also don't think he's going to be able to take his back. So I think Corey's going to be able to stay and back up. I kind of honestly see it being like a standing TKO cage type scenario where he just puts it on him and, Frankie doesn't go completely out, but he just doesn't have an answer for the volume coming back. Sandhagen could be wrong. Like I said, I'm not laying minus 400 on Sandhagen necessarily. I'm not throwing Sandhagen in my parlays, but I think plus 250 for KO against, relatively aging fighter. I think it's worth a small stab.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think Frankie's going to win. I cap Corey at 70% here. It's just what's the implied now, about 73%? I think there is a decent edge on the straight money line at the moment. So, look. And then
go ahead.
No, I was just saying I expect Corey to win. I'm just pure value.
Yeah, and then similarly, I don't recommend putting Corey in the parlays. I don't think this line is justified. That's why I am playing this prop, because I do think that there are, great opportunities for this outcome to happen.
For sure. And then we move on. We got actually what should be the rare, exciting heavyweight main event. We got Alistair Overeem taking on Alexander Volkov. Lags, you want to start?
Yeah, this is one I think pretty much a lot of us were talking about playing Volkov when it first opened at that nice number. But, it kind of got out of hand, I guess you could say. But, kind of where the line's at right now, minus 200, I think is a little too wide. I'm kind of in the belief that it's a close, high-level heavyweight type of fight that it could really go either way. But I lean Volkov here ever so slightly. I just don't think that the wrestling has looked great for Overeem in the last two fights. Sakai doesn't have a ground game, and neither does Walt Harris. And Walt Harris was seconds away from getting him out of that fight, which, we were all Walt, so that sucked. But yeah, end of the day, I don't think Overeem can get the wrestling going as he has in the past. And I like Volkov to finish this fight, probably second round, third round.
See, how about you?
I have zero interest in heavyweight fights that are 5 rounds. Honestly, I'd rather they just make these fucking 1 round, 22 minutes or something. No, I know a lot of people. I think Overeem's probably the value side, but. I don't know. I know a lot of people are on the over 1.5, which I thought about for a while. But Reem still can swing, and I think he still shows up when he gets against the cage. And I've kind of just had, it just happens. And I don't know. He's been, he's pretty durable. He's been durable lately, I guess. I think Volkov will tee off, though, against the cage more than someone like a Walt Harris or Sakai. I think Volkov's way more selective in his shots. and he'll go to the body. So I don't, I mean, I wouldn't be in love with it right now. I think it's like minus 220. But if you got like the minus 140 or whatever the hell it was, probably a decent number. I'd probably just go a little bit heavier and just kind of maybe just go on the GTD. Yeah, no super strong opinions. I guess let's go Reem. I don't fucking know. I mean, what happens if Overeem wins?
He gets the Francis fight back if Francis beats Stipe. I'm here for that.
Yeah.
Or he gets a Blades rematch, maybe.
Oh, no. Overeem.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'm more so on the over 1.5 truthers. I don't have an official play. I guess I kind of jumped in on one of the earlier lines. I guess was this over 1.5 down around Pick'em? Quinn said he got minus 125. I don't think it was
I saw the best was minus 160, and that's when I was like, I thought this was a little too chalky enough for me to not play it. To be honest.
Yeah, I played personally. I threw 2 units on it at minus 175, but that got hit pretty quick. So I guess I'm on a bit of an island here, but I think this fight goes late. Personally, it's a 25-minute fight. I don't necessarily think Volkov is going to come out here and just try to bum rush Overeem and just get him out of there. And even in doing so, I think the big feather in the cap of Overeem recently is I feel like he's adapted his style, not directly similar, but into a similar extent to Andrei Arlovski. I think both guys have been more defensively natured, which I think has extended their career. Yes, there's the shelling, but at the end of the day, if you watch all those fights, even when he's shelling, all the refs, because they're also main events, they put the more experienced refs in there. They know what he's doing. Like they know that this is just his defense. They're not gonna stop fights just because he's shelling him. He's blocking probably 75% of what's getting thrown anyway. So to me, I actually see this being a more moderately slow pace first round. So I think I'm really only going to be potentially sweating the last 2.5 minutes of that over 1.5. But I think it's a really great play. But I guess in terms of like a pick, originally I was also kind of with you guys that I thought I'd be playing Volkov, but man, I ended up putting him like minus 150 here. After doing deep dives on him like 2 or 3, 4 times now, like I just can't get all the grappling deficiencies out of my head for Volkov. Like I know his takedown defense statistically is pretty good, but he's bad on his back. I'm sorry, he just is. So it's historically Overeem, isn't a guy attempting all these takedowns. But what I will say, in the last 3 fights, he's getting and landing takedowns. So I think, in a guy in Volkov who largely pulls a pressure type based game, once again, this is ultimately why I'm not also, betting Overeem, because I can't necessarily bank on him to, shoot 10 takedowns or whatnot. But I think this is the type of a matchup, smart battle tested vet. I don't think he's really going to let himself get picked apart and walk down for the whole fight. I think he will try to shoot some takedowns here. There's the Tim Johnson fight, got knocked down, controlled extensively. The Roy Nelson fight, taken down early, controlled for 3 minutes. Verdum took him down multiple times, controlled him for 3+ minutes. Blades obviously took him down 14 times, controlled him for 20+ minutes. So obviously there's some solid grapplers, probably more accomplished than Overeem in there. I concede that. I'm just saying there's multiple data points to suggest that Volkov doesn't look great on his back if that's the path Overeem takes to any sort of moderate consistency. I think he could make this fight closer, but I'm going with Volkov via 3rd or 4th round KO.
Yeah, so I largely agree with what you just said, Luke. I think the line's more or less correct at the moment. I think Volkov presents a lot of challenges for Reem that are going to make this fight very, very, very difficult. In particular, you actually look at Reem's career, he's actually never fought anybody who pushes close to the kind of pace as Volkov. It's the only one really is Sakai, and we saw what that pace did to Sakai come round 3, whereas, Volkov actually has pretty good cardio. And I think that shell-up thing he does to protect that chin, Volkov actually will go to the body and work the body. You saw him hurt Harris there. I think he could be effective there. I just largely think, even though I think Reem is the more skilled striker, that if this stays standing, Jairzinho Rozenstruik outstruck him by 20 strikes. Sakai doubled him up at distance. I really think it's just going to be Volkov kind of, even if he doesn't finish him, just kind of cruising and just basically outlanding him for 25 minutes. But with that said, there's two big factors here, and given that it's a heavyweight fight, that make it pretty tough for me to lay minus 185, minus 190. The first is, look, while Volkov could finish Reem because of Reem's chin or via attrition, he's not super, super dangerous standing, whereas Reem, even today, like we saw in the Harris fight, we see it over and over, is extremely dangerous. He's got a nasty head kick. He still carries a fair bit of power. His clinch is still pretty dangerous. And then to your point, Luke, like I don't think Volkov's great on his back either. Now, I do think Reem can get it down there. The question is, how often can he get it down there? He doesn't attempt takedowns with much frequency. And when he has in recent years, they haven't been great. Plus, I'll never forgive him for just not doing anything on top of Rosenstruck in round 2 with him on the ground.
Yeah.
I can't get that out of my mind because, to be honest, if I had faith that he was going to go out there and throw the ground and pound he threw against Pavlovich or against Sakai, I'd probably play him in this spot. What I think is more likely is he'll get this down a couple times, likely gas out. Volkov will just stand up because he hasn't been as aggro on the ground unless he's got full mount. And Volkov probably wins the decision, maybe finishes him late. But I mean, Reem's really fucking good, man. Like, he's good enough and his finishing upside is high enough that at heavyweight in 5 rounds, it's really hard to see even Volkov with the, stylistic edges he has here being better than the current number. So it's not a play for me. I'm rooting for Reem too. Fuck off, C. We're not throwing Reem in there with Curtis Blades again. Like, that is, I'd much rather see him run it back with Ngannou, unpopular opinion, than Curtis Blades. Like that. At least Ngannou, maybe he could old man his way to a win, but like Blades just that was tough to watch. But yeah, so that's my pick. That's all we got for tonight. It's gonna be a fun card. Like I said, not a lot of betting angles. C has his $250 giveaway if Sewon Choi wins. We'll put out a tweet that you'll have to like and retweet and be following to be eligible. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. Again, we're brought to you by BetOnline. You can get 50% off your first deposit up to $1,000 using the code CLUB. Other thing is, Luke and I will be launching our inaugural Club and Sub DFS show tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be live. Stop by and join it. We're going to have Joe Sunzu will be joining us for the first episode. And also, Lags on clubandsub.com. If you go there, just posted a prop article, his 3 favorite props. He's going to be posting that every week. I'll have a write-up on all my bets coming Friday morning. And so, yeah, that's what we got. And we will see you guys next Wednesday night. Next week's going to be a pretty good card, couple big plays. Feb 20 is what I'm looking at, though. But anyway, guys, thanks for coming out. Usually we got Luke at SWR_betting, myself at MMA Fox, Lags at Lags_the Capper, and C at C Hansen 10. Thanks a lot, guys. Good luck this weekend.